Hello, welcome to the Universal Peace Federation. My name is Ray Lapaukin. Our program today is the International Leadership Conference, July 2021. And with this it's highlights of a 3-day conference, and there were 6 different seminars or webinars that took place over these 3 days, covering all the aspects that we're working with at UPF, of academics and religious leadership, parliamentarians, business and economics, academics. And this is the highlights from some of the leaders of those groups. Please enjoy.
Welcome everybody to our closing session for the International Leadership Conference for the month of July 2021. The last few days we've been talking about best practices in Track 2 diplomacy towards the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. Today we'll be hearing from the different session moderators and VIPs who will be offering congratulatory remarks. And let's start with Dr. Michael Jenkins, who is the president of Universal Peace Federation International and the chairman of UPF North America. Welcome, Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Kaeleigh. First, I want to congratulate Dr. Hak Cha-han Moon, who founded, together with her late husband, the Reverend Sam Young Moon, the Universal Peace Federation and the International Leadership Conferences. We've had a wonderful conference for the last 3 days, outstanding initiatives. I want to thank Dr. Moonshik Kim and Dr. Famularo and Reverend Robert Duffy of the Canadian UPF, which is part of our North American group. And I want to thank all of our leadership with UPF in America and the affiliated organizations, the World Clergy Leadership Conference, the World Christian Leadership Conference, and the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, the Youth and Students for Peace, and the International and Interreligious Association for Peace and Development, as well as Mr. Larry Moffitt and our wonderful UPF Secretary General and our Director of Congressional Relations, Ms. Kaeleigh Moffitt. We had excellent sessions. Our Vice President, Reverend Oliver, led an incredible session on Peace Road, which we'll be hearing about momentarily, which was a joint session with Russia and the United States. It was a really uplifting look at how we might bring peace between North and South Korea. And we've done many programs and panels on this discussion with diplomacy, with members of Congress, with key leaders from Vice President Pence to Secretary Pompeo to Bishop Noel Jones and people from every background. But this session was particularly of interest because it did not focus on the political or the diplomatic areas of politics or engagement from intelligence or the State Department. This time, we focused on how culture and arts can open the door to peace. We saw how the Little Angels went to North Korea, the first performing arts group from the Republic of Korea to North Korea since the Korean War broke out. And also the ongoing dialogue that has occurred through that cultural exchange. Also, we saw humanitarian aid in terms of MRIs and also CAT scans and the high-end equipment that these countries cannot get. 8 trips were made by a US organization and NGO into North Korea. Humanitarian aid is so important. We also heard from religious leaders about praying at the DMZ. We also heard from people of great character and how they're helping the refugees and how they're helping win the hearts of people in North Korea and even embrace the North Korean people from all sides. It was a soft power approach dealing with what we call track 2 diplomacy. Track 2 diplomacy is following track 1 diplomacy, which is between governments and between agencies. Track 2 diplomacy is though what Universal Peace Federation does. We do track 2 diplomacy, which is dealing with dialogue, understanding, humanitarian aid, and also peaceful engagement, painting a picture of the future of hope for all people, including nations that don't get along. We've had a most successful engagement. I want to thank Dr. Ki-Hyun Kim and Dr. Yong for their support, and especially I want to thank Congressman Dan Burton and Archbishop Stallings, who are heads of 2 of the associations. And we're going to be hearing from them also. I'm just so grateful for Mother Moon and her leadership at this time, because we are seeing miracles unfold every step we take with these wonderful forums and conferences. This forum did not only go on in North America, but it went on this week in every continent: Africa, South and Central America, Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and all parts of this world. It's a phenomenal movement that is going to bring peace in our time. We're so grateful. And we're praying for the people of North Korea to be liberated from the hunger and famine that's going on. And we're praying that a peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula will occur soon. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I would like to thank Kaeleigh for helping to moderate and set up so many of these sessions. Mr. Millhan Stevens, your YSP session was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, and thank you for your leadership leading us all through the last few days in preparation. We're very grateful for you as well. And now we'd like to hear a greeting from Dr. Moonshik Yong. He is the North American president of the Family Federation for World Peace. Let's hear our message from Dr. Yong.
Distinguished leaders and participants throughout America, on behalf of our founders, Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon and her late husband, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, I sincerely congratulate you for the success of the International Leadership Conference of the Universal Peace Federation. This conference was focused on the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula through track 2 diplomacy, which is also called the soft power approach to peace through dialogue, exchange of arts and culture, religious service, and humanitarian aid. This conference brought significant experts together to share insights and best practices on how to create bridges of understanding and common ground between enemy nations and peoples. Father and Mother Moon have dedicated their lives to teaching the fundamental principle that we must honor and attain God as a source of peace, and that when we practice living for the sake of others, we can make a better family, community, and world. The ILC session highlighted the beautiful effort to bring North and South Korea together through the exchange of culture and peace. You saw the beautiful trip of the little angels who were founded by Father and Mother Moon to North Korea on May 5th, 1998 at the first performing art and dance troupe that went to North Korea from the Republic of Korea since the Korean War. We also witnessed the beautiful work of faith leaders always praying for the North at the DMZ, and how UPF has brought the faith leaders together as a central part of the wall of the United Nations. Also, we saw organizations and NGOs that have brought huge amounts of medical equipment and supplies throughout the world, as well as leading Christians like Dr. Schulte, who has done so much to promote Christian values and support and care for refugees from the North. We are committed to working with the mega church leaders together with the UPF ACLC and YCLC to engage their great leadership in continued efforts to promote the peaceful reunification of Korea with a soft power approach, as we consistently engage with religious and civic leaders, business groups, NGOs, and artists in this endeavor. We want to thank Dr. Thomas Walsh, Dr. Michael Jenkins, Mr. Thomas McDavid, and all the men and women who work hard to bring all our affiliated organizations together, and to Archbishop Stallings and Congressman Dan Burton and Dr. Samia Burton, who work to bring cooperation between the religious and the political realms. We can see the International Leadership Conference opening the way of peace through this wonderful effort. We are grateful to you for your efforts and investment for the cause of peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Yong. Thank you for your blessing and support. And I like at the end, you made the comment that ILC is leading the way to opening the doors of peace. Thank you, Dr. Yong. Now we'd like to hear from Honorable Dan Burton, former member of the U.S. House of Representatives and the current global co-chairman of the International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace. Welcome, Congressman Burton.
Amazing how Mother Moon, Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon, has been able to bring these leaders together through UPF. She and Dr. Walsh and Dr. Jenkins and many, many other people that I have too many to name, they do so much and work so hard to bring about peace. And that's why I think these conferences are so important, because it extends the reach of their efforts to bring about peace for the world. That we'd like to see resolved the problems in North and South Korea. That's one of the things they've been working on through UPF for a long, long time. And because of the importance of that part of the world and that continent, or those two countries, it's extremely important that we put that at the forefront so we don't see another conflict break out that will cause severe problems in this world. So today, in my short period of time, I'd like to say to all the people who are watching around the world, it's important that you get involved, that your organizations get involved, that your non-governmental organizations get involved, and your religious groups to talk about world peace. In a world like what we have today with the virus and with the threat of possibly even nuclear war, it's so important that we realize the paramount objective that we ought to seek is a peaceful world. And everyone working together and talking together about this, I think, can reach that goal. I'm honored to be the co-chair of the International Parliamentarians for Peace. And we've been reaching out to parliamentarians and ex-parliamentarians all over the world. We have thousands that are now involved, but we need more people involved. And that's why I say to all of you who are watching today, please get involved. Talk to your leaders in your country, not just the governmental leaders, but the people in all walks of life, the NGOs, the church people. Talk to them about getting involved in the quest for world peace and solving these problems. If we all get together and do that, I'm sure things will be good throughout the 21st century. And with that, thank you for letting me say a few words today. It's really nice to be with you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Congressman Burton. Really appreciate especially your call to action for all of us to get involved in the different organizations that we represent to bring about the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. At this time, we're going to hear from each of our moderators of the different sessions we had, and they will give brief reports on the highlights of what happened in each session. First, I'd like to welcome Dr. Staffan Berg. He's the coordinator for IAAP in the USA, and he led the session on NGO initiatives in peace building. Welcome, Dr. Berg.
Thank you very much. And I'm so glad to be able to recap some of these wonderful points made by our three panelists in this session about NGO initiatives. The first speaker was Mrs. Jeannie Kagawa, who spoke about how this host NGO that we are part of, the Universal Peace Federation founders, Reverend Sang Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon, urged the UN to establish a council of religious leaders in order to foster peace. They made this call barely a month prior to the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center towers. So at that time, the UN was basically a secular institution, and Mrs. Kagawa testified that even up to 2006, it was anathema to mention God or spiritual values in its corridors. But due to the relentless work of Honorary Jose de Venecio, the former Speaker of the House of the Philippines, and the whole nation of the Philippine leadership, they were able to promote and pass several interreligious resolutions in the UN, starting 2004 with the verbatim proposal from Reverend Moon for the Interreligious Council as delivered by Dr. Thomas Walsh, the UPF International Chair, to Speaker de Venecio. And their tireless effort continued 2005, 2006, and I would say it culminated with 63 co-sponsors from nations around the world. And then King Abdullah of Jordan declared the World Interfaith Harmony Week in 2010. It was wonderful. And Mrs. Kagawa spoke about how NGOs can actually change the climate of interaction between nations in the UN and also elsewhere. And I look forward to hear more from her at some other upcoming webinar. The last speaker, Dr. James Jackson, exemplified and shared in a small short video clip about how his NGO, the Project Cure, which delivers medical equipment around the world to over 150 nations over 2 decades, had gone to North Korea upon the invitation of Chairman Kim Il-sung. And he shared very insightfully. And the long and short of it is saying, good, honest, sincere personal relationship makes a difference, can make a world of difference where otherwise political rhetoric and military sable rattling would have the day. So sincere and honest personal relationship, he really emphasized that. And the third speaker was Mrs. Tomiko Duggan, who we're going to hear from next. She shared about her personal experiences with DPRK from her youth as a student in Japan, whose classmate family repatriated back to North Korea and the trials that followed that. And she herself also visited DPRK and showed pictures from 2 of such tours of rapprochement to open DPRK for people-to-people tourism. And there's so much been said in the seminar. I'm so glad you're here. And if you want to find out more about Dr. James Jackson and Project Cure, you can go to the link. I think it's going to be posted in the chat box. And now I yield the floor, Mrs. Tomiko Duggan.
Thank you, Dr. Berg. Next, we will hear from Mrs. Tomiko Duggan. She's the Senior Vice President of UPF USA, and she led the session focused on the role of faith leaders in Track 2 diplomacy. Welcome, Mrs. Duggan.
Kaeleigh, thank you so much. We had excellent 4 speakers delivered on this theme. Our first speaker, Dr. Thomas Ward, president of the Unification Theological Seminary, he introduced 2 successful examples from the track 2 and track 3 diplomacy. He said the religious community of Saint Egidio in Rome and now several chapters around the world were identified by the U.S. Institute of Peace as playing a very important role in mediating conflict, the most important being the civil war in Mozambique. Dr. Ward believes that the UPF can play a similar role in the case of Korea in solving conflict. In December 1991, he said Reverend Moon and his wife, Hak Jahan Moon, visited North Korea. Their emotional meeting in which Reverend Moon warmly embraced Kim Il-sung referred to him as an elder brother. As a result of their meetings brought numerous substantial projects such as auto plants, hotel and tourism investment, cultural exchanges, and folk dance troops between effort between UPF and North Korea. This meeting also brought about North Korea the cancellation of Hate America Month that was practiced every year between June 25th to July 27th. So as a summary, Dr. Ward said, Dr. Moon and Hak Jahan Moon's effort, success in dealing with North Korea as what Reverend Moon described as the victory of love. It occurs not when we love and forgive our enemies, but when the enemy recognizes that love. This understanding continues with the work of Dr. Hak Jahan Moon. Our second speaker, Archbishop Stallings, he's the chairman of IAPD North America. His engagement is with Korea, the land of morning come, is motivated by the 50+ trips to the 38th parallel and coming to know the heart of the Korean family as our brothers and sisters on both sides of the dividing line. As a part of the global family, our one universal family under God. As a Christian minister, he believes in the power of prayer change things. The challenge is to become the true leaders in the world, as a religious leaders, as a channel, as a mediator, as a connecting point between God and men, a call to work together toward the peace, the oneness in humanity that is reflect very essence of God. And Dr. Suzanne Scholte, president of Defense Forum Foundation, is often, she was asked, when is the North Korean regime going to collapse? To which she answered, tomorrow. The challenge is how to make it happen peacefully. Truth will set the North Korea free, such as the truth that USA is not the enemy. The South Korean prosperity is real. Her presentation explains how 10 other described civilian volunteer organizations are reaching out North Korean people by land, sea, and air is the work. This includes delivering leaflets, cell phones, digital memory device stored with video and images being delivered by drones, by air balloons and rice bottle, floating devices along the coastal shores, USB with the video and Korean pop songs even. And she said, Korean choco pie dessert, Bibles and dollar bills. Such this radio with short waves radios and so on. She said, radio programming and broadcasting directed toward North Korean audience. Dr. Scholte also identified the structure of the North Korean government as a demonic response to the fervent Christian cultures that existed in Korea. She said before communist control, Kim Il-sung produced the Juche, or self-reliance, as a theory. The 3 Kim family leaders are worshipped as a king of Holy Trinity, like God, the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. That she mentioned that the fervent Christian spirit among North Korean people still exists. So our last speaker, Mr. Frank Stefania, Los Angeles-based TV producer and host, the head of Islamic Society of Orange County, who came to the United States prior to the Iranian Revolution. He was not able to return and stayed in the United States. His long association with the UPF has convinced him of the importance of the work of Reverend and Mrs. Moon as a peacemakers, and at this time sees the many seeds that they have sown as bearing flowers and fruits. To bring about Korean unity, he recommends working with the UN as the highest priority, working with established allies for help, using the German model for unification, concentrating on civic grassroots social engagement. He sees it as a necessary involvement between media and religious leaders working together. The session was, I received so many compliments, and one of speeches, many speeches were deep, and I hope they can listen to the home Facebooks as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Duggan. It was an excellent session, and thank you for your leadership. Now we'll hear from Dr. Franco Famularo, who's the president of UPF in Canada, and he led the session entitled Building Bridges of Peace Through Arts and Culture. Welcome, Dr. Famularo.
Well, good morning and good afternoon and good evening to all who are listening around the world. Our session was titled Building Bridges of Peace Through Culture and the Arts, representing the International Association of Arts and Culture for Peace, and included a distinguished panel that included Dr. David Eaton, Mrs. Maya Yamada, Reverend Gilbert Starr, and Dr. Nohi Pak. David Eaton began the session, then explained the purpose for the founding of the International Association of Arts and Culture for Peace by citing Dr. Hak-Ja-Han Moon, the founder, and her assertion that art and culture are primary because it is emotion, not reason, that changes the hearts of people. Experiencing aesthetic beauty in nature or art is an important factor in ameliorating hostility and conflict because hearts can be opened to new ideas via beauty. In this regard, the role of artists is extremely important. He stressed that artists don't create in a vacuum, but are part of the social fabric, cultural and political environment in which they live and work. As such, artists have a certain moral obligation in their creative endeavors. Citing the Greek and Chinese philosophers of antiquity, he referenced how they observed that it was possible to know a person or a society by the kind of music they enjoy. He mentioned that between 2003 and 2012, the Middle East Peace Initiative held numerous events in Israel and Palestine with the intention of creating interfaith harmony and reconciliation among the leaders of the three Abrahamic faiths. He also mentioned the role of cultural peace ambassadors and how this was played out by the Little Angels of Korea, created by Reverend and Dr. Moon in the early 1960s. In his closing remarks, Dr. Eden quoted an associate. He said, "We may sing songs of peace, but it's not enough just to sing the songs. We need to live the lyrics." Citing the need for production, support, and patronage, Mr. Eaton concluded with his personal motto: more music and less talk. Mrs. Mary Yamada followed, and she has been deaf since the age of 5. She directs the Eleanor Roosevelt Dance Company in Greenbelt, Maryland. She struggled to overcome her handicap to perfect her ability to speak and also to teach dance. She was part of the Gallaudet University Dance Company, a school of higher education for deaf people. Through dance, the pain and hurt they experience in the course of living and working through their handicaps liberated the dancers and the performers. She went on to establish the Eleanor Roosevelt Dance Company in 1996 for deaf and hard of hearing students. She incorporates American Sign Language into her dance pieces and has been active in teaching signing to non-handicapped people. She has also trained other dance instructors. Through such performances, barriers are broken down and understandings are created that did not exist before. Her daughter is also gradually becoming deaf, and her mother is preparing her for what she will experience. Then we had Reverend Gilbert Starr, who works at being a bridge between Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon and the biggest names in the entertainment world. Reverend Starr explained that through his many years of working with entertainers such as the Jackson family, Michael, and the others, Kool and the Gang, Spike Lee, Beyonce, and many others, he understood that most artists have a strong desire to work for and realize peace. He shared his passion to facilitate support for the peace-building efforts in collaboration with the mother of peace, Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon. Finally, we heard from Dr. No Hee Pak, who spoke about the May 2nd, 1998 trip of the Little Angels of Korea from Seoul to Pyongyang to perform. This was the first time since the Korean War that a performing arts group had visited North Korea from the South in an artistic exchange. Later, a troupe from North Korea performed in Seoul in exchange. Dr. Pak also shared about the elaborate and ongoing efforts of the UPF founders since the 1960s. His presentation concluded with a very moving video of the Little Angels' visit to North Korea in 1998 that vividly demonstrated the role of culture as peacemaker and spoke to the heart. Thank you, and may we continue to make more music and more art and less talk.
Amen to that, Dr. Franco. Great concluding sentence there. Definitely an important part of really bringing about peace in the world is art and culture. Now let's hear from Reverend Zagery Oliver. He's the Executive Vice President of UPF USA, and he led the very interesting session on paving the pathway for peace through the Peace Road. Welcome, Reverend Oliver.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I did have the distinguished opportunity to moderate the session on paving the pathway for peace with Peace Road. And also I had distinguished opportunity to be on a few areas of participated in the Peace Road 2020. I had Dr. Walsh and Mr. Konstantin Krylov and Dr. Stringer, and were the panelist speakers on my session. Dr. Thomas Walsh spoke about the International Peace Highway called for by UPF co-founders, Reverend Sun Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon in Korea in 1981. He stressed that the co-founders emphasize it represents a new connectivity between people making separate nations into neighbors. Dr. Walsh showed proposed maps of new roads linking North, Central, and South America, and proposed a Pan-African highway that the African Union is committed to as well. He also mentioned China's Belt and Road system and also showed maps of the ancient Silk Road and the road system of Roman Empire that illustrates the historical example and the desire to create physical communication around the world and its impact had on each nation and each culture. Mr. Konstantin Krylov addressed perspectives he encountered in Russia, North Korea, the DPRK, and his experience in meeting with diplomats in the DPRK and Russia. Because of the volunteers and ambassadors for peace throughout Asia have given their great and overwhelming support to the Peace Road initiatives, it helped open the doors for a small team from Russia to be able to go to Pyongyang to do a Peace Road bike ride. Thus, the Peace Road 2019 was approved. The government provided bicycles for the group. They also conducted a half running marathon, which was about 13 miles around Pyongyang, that won the respect of North Korean officials. Next speaker was Dr. Daniel Springer, spoke of the Transcontinental Railroad project across Canada that would ultimately link to the Bering Strait Tunnel. He presented the issue of global warming causing frequent thaws would have an effect on the stability of the roadbed. The other concern was about the indigenous people across whose the land that the railroad would travel must be dealt with respectively. His conclusion was that the Peace Road should pass through the major urban centers and should offer services to those particular centers. He emphasized urban centers are where the votes are. He sees this as an optimum. Last but not least, myself, I had the opportunity to give some opening remarks as the moderator. My remarks was about the importance of unity of cooperation between Black and white tribes in America, the vision of heaven for America to be a place where all divisions amongst humankind can come together to be healed, how racial healing in the United States can enable America to influence the world toward peace and similar reconciliations amongst divided people, and how critically important it is toward the process of unifying North and South Korea. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Oliver. It was a very intriguing session. Thank you for your leadership at that time. And now let's hear from our final moderator, Reverend Millhan Stevens. He is the president of the International Association of Youth and Students for Peace in the United States. And he led the session just earlier today, talking about youth initiatives towards peace. Welcome, Reverend Stevens.
Thank you, Kaeleigh. And I have to start with a big thank you to the UPF leadership and staff for putting together this conference and for granting IAYSP a whole session to present today. Our session's theme was on, I would say, the centrality and power of youth initiatives and their role for a peaceful Korea. So I'll summarize the session in the hopes that you'll go back and watch it in case you missed it. So we start off with the president of IAYSP International, Mr. Koji Matsuda, and he reviewed the meaningful works of IAYSP around the world. Then we had a very accomplished Harvard student, Tarina Ahuja, who spoke about the need to activate young people to be the leaders of today, not just for tomorrow. Then we had the media and communications manager for IAYSP Korea, Samuel Reed. He talked about the award-winning efforts that the Korean youth are doing with YSP in Korea to raise public awareness and interest for Korea reunification. You know, he pointed to some statistics about the apathy, and actually many young people actually are not interested in reunification for all of the challenges that will come about from it. So we need to really build the interest in this. And then similarly, the next speaker, a student group leader for on college campuses, Kodai Abe, he demonstrated this concerted effort and also fearless action to amplify Father and Mother Moon's vision for a reunified Korea, which I think is the best. Then we had a young minister, Yoshie Munaka, who shared her experience with addressing social unrest in America and offering a way for us all to help. And she coined this term. It may not be a new term, but she said that we need to be emotionally invested in this conflict through projects like Peace Road, ways that we can apply ourselves, more than just raising awareness, but actually be vested emotionally, through social media and those who understand this technology and this expression can really make a difference. My main takeaways from this session was a reminder of a few different things. One is inheriting and continuing the successful efforts of the past. Next is a deeply incorporating empathy into not just our mannerisms or how we conduct ourselves, but into our policy and course of action. Understanding of the complexity of the conflict in Korea and honoring the grassroots effort that are happening in Korea. Then next is this righteous indignation, and then this boldness to push forward despite all the doubts and fears. Next is emotional, and lastly is emotional investment, and that to make the change, it really starts with me and what I can do even in my daily life. And so I think that young people in particular are gifted with these qualities, and I think that our contribution is really something that needs to be considered today. And again, this is just the beginning, but I'm looking forward to working with all these fine people to build peace in the Korean Peninsula. Thank you again, and I look forward to the next opportunity.
Thank you, Reverend Stevens. It was definitely a very inspiring session, I think, to see so many young people with this kind of thinking and mindset. So thank you for bringing them all together. And we're getting towards the end of our program, but we'd like to invite Dr. Moonshik Kim. He is the chairman of the Universal Peace Federation of Canada. Dr. Kim, we'd love to hear your closing remarks for today.
Yeah, I'd like to express my appreciation to all of our distinguished panelists, participants, and UPF leadership. I also would like to offer my gratitude to UPF co-founder, Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon, for her consistent support for the International Leadership Conference series and for emphasizing that a unified Korean Peninsula is an important stepping stone to world peace. Through participating in the recent ILC, it was great to see all the different initiatives supporting the reunification of the Korean Peninsula. NGO initiatives in peace building, faith-based initiatives, art and cultural initiatives, and especially youth initiatives. The vision for a peace road is a remarkable idea. I feel a lot of energy and hope when I see that many young people are starting to own the common vision of one family under God, the ultimate goal of our founders and all ambassadors for peace. Our youth inheritance of the dream, their involvement and engagement in leadership all over the world opens a new phase of our worldwide joint effort toward the movement for Korean reunification. In this sense, I'm grateful to our founder, the Mother of Peace, Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon, for opening a new horizon for young people to see the great vision of one family under God by promoting Peace Road and the Youth and Student for Peace. It is encouraging to hear that this year, even during the COVID-19 pandemic, many young people in Korea have been promoting the peaceful reunification of Korea through Peace Road in major cities under the auspices of many social organizations, politicians, and community leaders in their own cities. Peace Road is becoming a new brand for peace. I'm very proud that our North American region the USA and Canada can support and contribute to the reunification of Korea in unique ways with our great strengths and power of all the initiatives presented in the ILC this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kim. And I really agree with those remarks you made about Mother Moon opening up a way for young people to understand this vision of peace. Very grateful for that as well. And now we'd like to hear from Dr. Ki-Hoon Kim, who is the chairman of the World Christian Leadership Conference. Dr. Kim, we'd love to hear your concluding remarks today.
Thank you, Kaeleigh, and thank you, UPF, all steps centering on Dr. Jenkins and Dr. Wolsey. And I am so impressed your ceaseless effort for the sake of reunification North and South Korea. You know, I'm very tearful whenever I participated in UPF International and UPF USA, North Korea, North America, this ILC conference. You're doing weekly webinar and one after another one. I never seen and heard any organization doing this effort for the sake of my homeland unification. Thank you again. I am very impressed. And as you do all this kind of effort, I remember 2017 and also last year when we visited Korea and DMZ and we prayed. And after we prayed together, North and South, two nations president, they met each other. And we seen some vision over there. And a few days ago, and after over 1 year, they blocked any communication, telephone, and any video communication between two countries. But a few days ago, they restored this communication system. This is another great sign we can see on our eye for the sake of reunification North and South Korea. This is effort, UPF and Father Mother Moon, all organizations, we are initiating and working together for the sake of reunification North and South Korea. This is, no one else can do it. Father Mother Moon and founding spirit, especially UPF activities. In Korea, very popular short word saying, there is no tree that does not fall after being taken 10 times. So your effort definitely can bring great vision and realization of reunification of South and North Korea. Once again, thank you so much, especially these young peoples. Their participation, great hope. They have vision. They have passion. They have a statistic study, and they are really come together with the UPF webinar. This is another great hope for next. Once again, thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kim. Such sincere remarks. And thank you for mentioning the incredible breakthrough of reestablishing communication on the Korean Peninsula and for your support of the young leaders for the future. Thank you. And now we'd like to welcome Archbishop George Augustus Stallings for his concluding remarks. He is the chairman of IAPD of North America. Welcome, Archbishop Stallings.
Thank you very much, Kaeleigh, and to all of our participants in this tremendous UPF International Leadership Conference. I'm going to segue the remarks of my esteemed leader, Dr. Ki-Hoon Kim, for a number of years working as a member of the American Clergy Leadership Conference, in that the consistency of these workshops, these conferences, these seminars, these summits will add to the fever pitch of bringing about the reunification of North and South Korea. The Korean Peninsula, known as the land of the morning calm. Isn't that ironic that we call it that, the land of the morning calm? And we must work diligently and overtime, really, in overdrive, to work towards that reunification of that one country, yet divided at the 38th parallel. And how do we do that? We do it by thinking globally, yet acting locally. We have to realize that we are interrelated. There's only one world, one universal family under God. And somehow what is going on the Korean Peninsula between North and South Korea may seem distant to so many of us if we're not of Korean ancestry or Korean, if we're not in that country. But we must realize that there is something that inextricably binds us together as that one universal family, all created in the divine image and likeness of God, brothers and sisters, one unto the other. I'm often moved and empowered by this restlessness that we experience in true parents in bringing about that reunification, that they have made this a central theme of their providential work. Not only the unification of world Christianity, but also the reunification of North and South Korea. And I think of the words of, and I'm motivated by the words of Martin Luther King Jr., issued from the Birmingham jail in April of 1963, when he said that in a real sense, all life is interrelated. All men and women are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be, and you can never be what you were meant to be and ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This, and King concludes by saying, this is the interrelated structure of humanity, of reality. And so therefore, it is incumbent upon us to make this issue of the reunification of the Korean Peninsula, North and South Korea, the way it was always meant to be from the dawn of creation, that God never intended us to live in division, but to be united as one. And that's why we're praying for that reunification of North and South Korea. And then lastly, there's a song that I love, and I've often thought of this whenever it comes to the whole idea of having the imagination to see this reunification take place, not centuries down the road, not even decades down the road, but now in our lifetime. The words of John Lennon in the song, Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion to. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world, Korea, will be as one. Thank you. 감사합니다.
Thank you. Thank you, Archbishop Stallings. We are so grateful for your leadership at this time, and we are going to conclude our program today. Very grateful for the remarks of all of our moderators, and especially Dr. Moonshik Kim, the chairman of UPF of Canada, and also Dr. Yong, our president of North American Family Federation, and our beloved leader, Dr. Ki-Hoon Kim, Chun Wan for America, and chairman of the WCLC World Christian Leadership Conference. Dr. Kim, your remarks about some change coming when Mother Moon had us in Korea and the prayers of the clergy, yes, and then the meeting started to open up between North and South Korea, and the line of communication was just opened up this day, this week. And we had another thing occur. The top representative of the Biden administration got clearance to work with us directly for UPF. Just happened 2 days ago during our ILC conference. I do want to have a moment of special thanks and gratitude for our Secretary General, Mr. Larry Moffitt. He is always actually the key communicator for the heads of state, as well as all of the programs that are going on. Larry, could you just give a final remark of your thoughts or appreciation for our founder and this program? Mr. Larry Moffitt.
Thank you very much for your generous words, Dr. Jenkins. The thing that is refreshing about this conference is that it gets away from geopolitics, which is what I'm usually steeped in most of the time. We're talking about people to people. We're talking about NGOs. We're talking about faith-based organizations. We're talking about Peace Road, the youth, the young people. Well, to me, everybody's a young person, but the young people in that session just before this was, I mean, amazing. The dynamic energy, they reminded me of us during the 60s and 70s. I'm truly grateful for Mother Moon, the Mother of Peace, who put this together, who puts all her time and energy, who does more than anybody I've ever seen in my life to create this type of project. And before her late husband, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, I'm on a project that's working on recreating the chronology of every day of the lives of Father and Mother Moon in the United States for over 40 years. And the dominant impression is that they never spent any time for themselves. Everything is giving to others, traveling, teaching, talking, completely sacrificial for 40 years. It's unbelievable. I could not even imagine. It's more than anything I can do. So my gratitude is without limits. Thank you very much, Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. As I always say, the idea of Universal Peace Federation is interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universally shared values. And that's what we're trying to promote, as you saw in this conference. And you saw there are leaders from all over Europe, Asia, United States, from the academic field, business field, political field, and so many leaders that are getting involved in this process to bring peace and hope and reconciliation to our world. If you'd like to learn more about this, please get in touch. Our contact information is up on the screen. And as always, at the end, I always like to promote the biography of our co-founders, Reverend Moon and his wife, Dr. Hakchan Moon. If you're interested in a complimentary copy, please get in touch with me. Thank you so much.